Hi everyone, I hope you're all ready for the next chapter of our story, The Legend of Kevin. We're up to chapter 4 and it's called The Flood. All through the night, the rain which had been falling over the wild western hills had been gurgling down the streams and little rivers into the big river Bumble, which ran through the middle of Bumbleford. The river had been rising higher and higher, flowing faster and faster. Just before breakfast, a trickle of water came over the riverbank, and that trickle turned into a stream, and the stream turned into a whole new river, and it went roaring off down the high street, splashing and gurgling as if it was excited to be running over pavements and roads, instead of running over a riverbed. It lifted up parked cars and played with them for a bit, and it left them in untidy heaps. It turned the market square into a lake, and all the buildings into islands. It spilt into the shops and into the restaurants. All over Bumbleford, people woke to the unexpected sloshing and slopping sounds. Cats and dogs who had been asleep in people's kitchens went running upstairs to shake themselves dry and warn their owners that things were getting awfully wet downstairs. 2 guinea pigs floated out of an open window and set sail across the town in their hutch. The guinea pigs' names were Beyonce and Neville, and they thought it was excellent fun, but nobody else did. Bumbleford was flooded, and the rain was still falling down and down, and the water was rising up and up. "Mum," said Max at breakfast time, "there's a fat flying pony in my room." "Ah, that's nice, dear," said Mum. "He blew onto my balcony last night," said Max. "He's hurt his wing. His name's Kevin." "Really?" said Dad, but he wasn't listening. Neither of them were. They were watching the local news on TV. "Shocking scenes in Bumbleford, where the whole town centre is now under water," said the newsreader. "Oh, my poor hairdressing salon," said Mum. "The local lifeboat was launched to help people trapped in their houses," the newsreader went on. "But unfortunately, it was a non-waterproof lifeboat, and so it's dissolved. The mayor has declared a state of emergency." The TV studio was flooding too. The newsreader's desk began to float. He climbed on top of it and started using a clipboard as a paddle. "Abandon town," he shouted, paddling off the side of the screen. "Women, children and newsreaders first." The water rose until the TV set looked like a goldfish tank. A fish swam up to the camera and made fishy faces at it. Then the water must have got into the camera because the screen went a bit snowy. It must have got into Bumbleford's power station too because the TV turned off and all the lights went out. The hum of the fridge and all the other small, steady sounds that Max never really noticed on normal days suddenly stopped, all at once. The flat was filled with a surprised silence. "This is a pain," said Mum. "The town is flooded and now we've got no electricity." "It's not a pain, it's a calamity," wailed Daisy, checking her phone. "We've got no Wi-Fi. Without Wi-Fi, I'll die." "Now, everyone, keep calm," said Dad. "Yes," said Max. "Come and see my pony." He grabbed Mum by the hand and started pulling her away from the breakfast table, but just as they were passing the living room window, they heard knocking on the glass. Outside were Mr. and Mrs. Brown, who live on the ground floor. They were roped together like mountaineers and carrying enormous backpacks. Mum slid the window open and said, "What on earth are you doing out there?" "Our flat's flooded," said Mr. Brown, sounding quite pleased about it. "How dreadful," said Mum. "Oh, we don't mind," said Mrs. Brown. "We like adventures. Usually we have to go hiking the hills to find them, but now an adventure has come knocking on our own front door." "Well, sort of more trickling underneath it," said Mr. Brown. "The water was a metre deep and rising fast when we woke up," said Mr. Brown. "So I said to Nigel, 'Nigel,' I said, 'you know what this is? It's a flood.' So we packed our survival gear and some essential supplies, and we headed for higher ground, and that's you. Your flat is the highest place in the whole town. You don't mind if we stay?" They came into the room, dripping on the carpet and coiling up their climbing ropes. "You climbed up the side of the building?" asked Dad, coming to help them off their backpacks. "Yes," said Mr. Brown. "You mustn't use the stairs in a flood. It's very important. If you're thinking of lifts and fires, said Mum, you're not supposed to use the lift in a fire. Stairs in a flood can be just as dangerous, said Mrs. Brown firmly. The truth was, they had just been happy to have an excuse to use their mountaineering skills. After that, it was useless trying to give Mum and Dad an understanding about Kevin. They were too busy making cups of tea on the Browns' camping stove and talking about the flood. So Max helped himself to more custard creams and went back to his room to see how Kevin was. And that's the end of chapter 4. There'll be more coming soon. Take care.